Guys, let's start putting phones away. No warm up, but get your notebook out, Chromebook out. We'll need them. As well as, let's start gluing in our
Attention staff and students, this is a tardy speech. Teachers, please lock your doors. Students, if you did not make it to class on time, please make your way to the cafeteria. Once again, this is a tardy speech. Students, if you did not make it to class on time, please report to the cafeteria.
Alright guys, let's go ahead and get started again. Notebook, Chromebook, glue in. This should be on page 41 because video notes this week are covering 2, and that's all we're doing for homework this week is video notes. Your homework that you were supposed to turn in Monday, I'll collect it tomorrow, just because it's a shorter day and we have a lot to do today. What's up? Okay, I won't mark it late, but I'll do it. Let's do it right after. Let me see one. I can usually tell them. Okay. The top two are good. These are the two that we want to fix. So we'll work on it. It's an easy fix. When's class?
Wait, page 39.
Well, section.
Wait, Mr. Why weren't you here in the 49?
We can talk about it after.
There's 2 videos.
We're gonna need a whiteboard for a bit, so don't grab it yet. Just wait until we actually use them.
That's why 2 videos.
One whiteboard for a group. Did you spray or you yeah, 41 seconds. Because there's 5 videos. Yeah, what happened? Guys, less than a minute and then we're gonna start. Alright guys, we are going to get started in Sandra. Let's put on. We're gonna get started. Alright. Let me start getting your attention up here. Should have it glued in already by now. We are going to do, guys, let me start getting your attention. We are going to do our notes. They're gonna be pretty quick. And then we're gonna go right into practice on what these notes are actually about. So hopefully you glued them in. I mentioned we're gonna take our notes. We are looking at population dynamics, which really comes down to about 6 different terms that we're gonna cover right now. Those are the top 6 terms on top of your notes. And then the bottom half of your notes is practice. I'm gonna give you guys a birth rate, a death rate, fertility rate. I'm gonna give you guys all those. You're gonna tell me what country you think it is, as well as what's the natural rate increase. And then you're gonna have to make a statement or a claim based off of the information. It seems like a lot right now, but once we actually get into it, it's not too difficult. And then we have an exit ticket, so exactly what you guys are doing for practice, that will be what you'll do for the exit ticket, but we'll just kind of turn that in for the points. So we'll get started on that. First thing, so I need everybody ready to take the notes.
Are you gonna lock our screens?
I am gonna lock your screens. Thank you for just because I want you following along and not just going ahead and writing notes. Thank you, Rockdown. You should be a teacher one day.
I don't like kids. I would be a teacher for elementary.
Alright. Should be locked on your screen. Alright, so let me start getting your attention. So we're gonna start our notes. The first thing we're taking notes on is crude birth rate. What it really means, here's the long definition for it, but I'll break it down. But what this really means, crude birth rate is counting the number of births per year divided by the population and multiplied by 1,000. That seems like a lot to do. What's up? Yeah, that seems like a lot to do, but let me talk about it like in Orange Cove's term. So Orange Cove, I made a guess, I don't know if this is exactly true, but every year when kids are registered for school at about first grade, there's 250 students. So I'm guessing in Orange Cove, every year there's about 250 students or 250 babies born in Orange Cove. Then our population is roughly 10,000. I just rounded up to keep it clean. And then to get the actual crude birth rate of Orange Cove, I had to multiply by 1,000. And so our crude birth rate in Orange Cove is 25. Is that high or low? We're gonna start to compare it to others before we can determine whether that's high or low. But all this really helps us understand is population growth. So how many kids are being brought into a region or a country, or in this case, we're talking about a city, right? How many kids are being brought in? Now, the issue with crude birth rate and measuring people off of crude birth rate is that this includes the total population, meaning when we're counting the number of babies, we're comparing it to the population that includes men and women of all ages. Now, do men have babies?
No.
Right? Not yet. But But in general, this makes it complicated. We are going to use this for our formula later. This makes it complicated to actually calculate how many women are having babies. And so we have another formula for that coming up in a bit. But for crude birth rate, again, we're just taking the number of births, dividing it per year, dividing it per population, multiplying it by 1,000. Now the math part to calculate crude birth rate, you will never have to do. That's always going to be given to you. You never have to do that math. But I want you guys to kind of see how they get to that number, because we're going to look at some of the crude birth rates number this for today actually in practice. You all ready? Let's keep going. Total fertility. So this is that better way to calculate how many babies are being brought in. So in this case, we've already kind of seen this, especially when we're looking at China and the one-child policy. But in this case, total fertility rate is the number of children born per woman between the ages 15 to 49, because that's who we consider to be women that are giving birth, right? Some might give birth earlier, some might get it later, although that's rare. But in general, we took that number 15 to 49, and that's who we're comparing it. You can kind of see our map of the world. The areas that are purple have the highest total fertility rate, meaning they have the highest number of births per women in that area. In the US specifically, right now, it was updated last year, roughly 1.66 children are born per woman. You don't have to write that right, but just to give you guys a reference. And all this shows us is, again, how our population is growing. That's really what this number is telling us, how our population is growing. Scroll down. Displays population growth. Don't worry, we're gonna get into the practice right now. But we have to kind of have all these facts down before we get into our practice. Just kind of walking around making sure we're doing okay. Next one we're going to go down into is our death rate. Finish our notes then. Our crude death rate. This one, opposite of birth rate, is how many people are dying divided by the population multiplied by 1,000. Now this one is a more accurate representation of the deaths per year, because in this case we are counting everybody. Whereas in the birth rate, we don't want to count men towards the number of children that are being born, right? We don't want to count the men because they don't really give birth. So this is a kind of funky number. But in this case, when we look at a country or when we look at a place, we want to see for every 1,000 people, how many people are dying. This kind of helps us decide whether that country is safe. Maybe people are dying because of violence or war, right? We saw that with the Ukraine population pyramid, where the age that people go to war, a lot of them were no longer there. It could also tell us anything about health, right? If a lot of people are not living super long, maybe there's something with their healthcare system, maybe their diets are not where they should be. So it tells us information about their health as well. And so that's what the birth death rate means. We are going to use birth rate and death rate to do some math. That's as far as the math will go. It's really just adding and subtracting. We'll practice that right now. That's what the whiteboards are for. We'll come back to it once we get there. But that's as much math as you'll have to do in this class, really. It's calculating NIR. We'll practice it. Pretty simple. Alright, let's keep going. Life expectancy, and I'm going to slow down here. So, life expectancy from the moment you're of birth, the moment you were born, to when you die, how long are you expected to live based off of where you live? So I'll open it up here. I want to hear what people think. Or actually, let's do this. Let's write down the whiteboard. In the U.S., what do you guys think the life expectancy is in the U.S.? Talk about it with your group first before you write anything. In your whiteboard, guys, go ahead and write it. How long do you think people live in the U.S.? That we know copies your answer. What do you guys think? How long do you guys expect people to live in the U.S.? In the U.S. Alright guys, on the count of three, we're going to put them up. You guys all ready? You guys all ready? Waiting on one, but always waiting on this. Alright, on the count of three, 1, 2, and 3. So, all of you in the 80s are a little bit off. You're the closest to, it is close to 79, it's 77. 77. 77. So you guys are all high. But again, we'll look at these guys real quick. Let's bring it back in. What life expectancy really tells us is it describes the quality of life. So it gives us 3 real factors that goes into quality of life. In this case, we took out education because that, as much as we think, it might play some factor in life expectancy, but not as much as these 3. So it does cover health, right, and healthcare. So how long people live. Health is a big factor in that. Safety, so we talked about violence, right, or any wars, that affects how long people live. And then economics is the third one, right? The more money a country has, the more developed they are in terms of economics. The longer people are going to live. There's a direct connection between those 2 things. So that's what life expectancy does. The reason I mentioned that is because we are going to be asked to look at these countries. And you might draw a connection like, hey, this country isn't living too long. Maybe something's happening in terms of their life expectancy. Could be directly related to one of those 3 factors. Let's keep going. We're almost done with our notes. Infant mortality rate. So this is where it's going to get a little dark. So infant mortality is counting the number of children who die before they reach the age of 1, right? And that's per 1,000 people. So if we have a high infant mortality rate, that means more children are dying before the age of 1. And we leave it up to 1 because that first year is considered a really big year in terms of health care for the child. This kind of helps us see whether that country has good access to health care in that region, to support the life of the infant. Yeah, there's a lot of children there. This shows us access to healthcare, and that's the biggest thing, right? Areas that have more access to healthcare are gonna have a lower infant mortality rate. If they don't have as much access to healthcare, we're gonna see a higher infant mortality rate. And so, just by looking at the world map, I posted it on there as well, we can see these areas with red. Those are all areas that have high infant mortality rates, some of them up to 17% of their infants die before the age of 1, right? And that's really high. Compared to the US, we're a little bit under 1% infant mortality rate. So that's pretty good. We're almost done. We got, what, one more?
Yeah.
One more note. Alright, and then we're gonna get to practice. You'll see, it's easy. There's 2 different types of practices, but we'll get there. Let's finish up. So now, natural increase rate. This is what you guys are going to actually be doing math towards. And so I'll talk about it when we get there. All this is our CBR, crude birth rate, minus our CDR, our crude death rate. So when we take the number of how many people are born per 1,000 people, subtract how many people die per 1,000 people, and then we're gonna get to see whether there's an increase or decrease in population. So this helps us determine if the population is growing. If that natural increase rate is high, that means the population is growing. If it's low, meaning somewhere between 0 and 3, the difference between the CBR and CDR is between 0 and 3, then the population is pretty stable. It's not growing, it's not shrinking. It might be growing a little bit, but not as much. And then if we have a negative NIR, that means the population is declining and they're gonna have less and less people. So we're gonna do some math right now on the whiteboard, and this is what the whiteboards are really for. We're gonna do it with the group, so it'll just be practice before we actually get to the big practice. Yes, but only one. It's the same thing. What you guys do? See, you'll look at the CBR, the CDR, subtract it, and that's it. So pretty simple math. I know some people don't like math, but pretty simple math. You guys all ready? Here's the first one. So again, on our whiteboard with the entire group, you're gonna have to calculate what these are. Let's practice the first one. If our CBR is 4.3 and our CBD, it should be, I wrote that wrong. Let me change it. CDR.
Why is it CDR?
Crude death rate. That's it. Right? So if our CBR is 4.3 and our CDR is 2.4, what is our NIR? Go ahead and do the math and then we'll check. Once you guys have it, go ahead and put your whiteboard up. You got it? Leave it up, leave it up. You guys got it?
Oh, wait, never mind. I did that on
No, it's not. You guys got it? Yeah, we'll talk about it. Close. You guys got it? Go ahead and show me in 3, 2, 1. Show me. 1.9. Yeah, 1.9. I see what you did. Let's do another practice. So 5.8 and 3.2, a little bit easier. Yeah, one number. Yeah. Take over. We'll get to a tougher one, don't worry. Alright, go ahead and show me in 3, 2, 1. 2.6. Alright. Let's go 2 more practice. 34.7. These are actual numbers if you guys are curious. These are actual numbers. So if a CBR is 34.7 and our CDR is 12.4. Our CBR is 2.3, our CDR is 4.3.
So what does that mean though?
And we'll talk about it, Mark. We'll talk to you.
Oh.
So we're gonna go back. Don't worry. So go ahead and show me in 3, 2, 1. Show me. Yeah, -2. That's the big thing. So now, great question Sandra asked was, what does that mean? Let's go back. Our first one was 1.9. That means the population is growing, but only by a few people per year, right? So I would consider that pretty stable. Second one was 5.8 to 3.2. The difference was 2.6, right? 2.6 is still pretty low. A lot more people being born than dying, or not a lot, but a significant amount of people born versus deaths. This was the big one, right? 34.7 to 12.4. That means there is a lot of people being born in that population, which means their population is growing. And then lastly, we had a negative. Anytime it's a negative, that means the population is declining. So they're gonna have less and less people every year if this continues. All right, now we're gonna go to our actual practice. That was just to practice the math because this is gonna come up. But I'm gonna give you guys 3 countries. You're gonna have to guess which country it belongs to. You're gonna have to calculate the NIR. And then the last thing you have to do is write a statement, and I'll show you guys. You're gonna write a statement about the country. So you could tell me this country has a high birth rate or a high death rate or a high life expectancy or a low life expectancy, whatever you want to tell me based off of all this data. Once you have decided what you want to tell me, you're going to tell me what that means. And so now you have to go back to your notes, right? So if I'm saying, just going to be a random one, if I'm saying this country has a high infant mortality rate, right? That means a lot of babies are dying. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to say this country has a high infant mortality rate, which means they probably don't have good access to health care, right? You're making a claim based off of the data that we have. Let's go ahead and fill in the data for country number 1 in the first box. Again, guess what country it is. It's one of these 3, Mexico, Yemen, or Japan. Natural increase rate. The bottom one. Oh, that's
Why does this one say TFO?
Total fertility rate. Why is this 2? That last box should be IMR. Last box should be IMR. I thought I copied it. Infant mortality rate. Oh, I'll pass it down. Guys, so again, right now, we are guessing what country it is. Calculate the NIR, so CBR minus CDR, right? And then make your claim. What do you notice about this country?
Has a what?
In, what's it
Has a
called?
what? Has a.
Well, you're making a claim, so
This country has a low.
low what?
High.
Infant mortality rate.
And what is this INR and
I know, that was a mistake, but go off of the whiteboard, or the board.
Has a high. So this is what is the high
For which one?
for NIR.
Yeah, yeah, that means there's a lot of people are being born. Population total.
Wait a minute. What do we write in our claim? Like, do we do
So, any claim based off of the information it has. So you're writing any claim based off of the information that it has there. Don't worry if you don't know the guess yet.
What's it? INR?
This is but it's go off of that, yeah, natural increase rate. What is So if it's so how did you get to it's growing? So what does this tell us, right? This tells us the number of children we have and the number of people dying. So you could just say this is a growing population because more people are being born than people die. Right? Is that high? Oh, we just saw the US is at 77.
Sir Sanchez?
Yeah, that's supposed to be
They have a low life.
yeah.
Can we see the list?
I'll put it up right now. 63 years. It's the same thing as my opinion. Here's what I'm gonna do, guys. I'm gonna lock your screen so you can see all three compared to each other. That's gonna help you. So go ahead and go to this PowerPoint. Let me unlock your screen. Because if you look at country B, you can kind of compare. You can kind of compare life expectancies, birth rate, death rate. I mean, you can compare all of them. And that's gonna give you a good reference whether something is high or low. Right? And then country C. Do not look at country D. That is for the exit ticket. So right now it's just A, B, and C. Only A, B, and C. I'm gonna start passing out our flashcard for the exit ticket. That's where you're gonna write your exit ticket.
Wait, but countries?
Yeah. And we're gonna talk about them before we write the exit ticket, so don't worry. That way we can fully make sure we understand it. You guys actually ready? Today? Guys, Juanita, for those that have to leave, we'll cover it tomorrow.
So come back up.
Is it 47 yet?
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
44, 3 minutes, 3 minutes you go. But try to do as many right now.
Okay.
Try to do as many.
Okay.
Who has the highest electric expectancy? So that should help you guys. Again, compare all three countries. That's gonna help you. No, we'll look at compare the three. Who has the highest life expectancy? That's the.
So where is he?
Yemen is in the middle between Africa and Asia.
Aren't they in like a civil war?
Yes, they are. They are. So that should help you. It should.
Wait, did you? I'm gonna use the key.
Alright guys, in a couple minutes, I'm gonna bring you guys back in before we cover the exit ticket. For those that have to leave, go ahead and pack up your stuff and leave. It's like, for those that don't have to leave, you have to stay in here and sign. Guys, we'll take the flashcard for those that are.
Wait, tomorrow or today? Tomorrow?
They're leaving, they have to go. We still got like 10 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, we'll cover it tomorrow for those that are leaving.
Chop it. Hey, no, don't do this to my knee. Chop it up.
CGR minus CGR, right? Average 30.5 minus 4.79. What's the difference?
They have like an 85.
So that one's lower, but what's the difference though? Is it a big difference or a small difference? It is a big difference. So then let's actually calculate it.
When you're done, can I take a picture?
Put the number and then tell us whether that's a growing population, stable, or declining.
Because Yemen is a new country, so it makes sense.
They wrote down on the struggle. So what's the difference between these two? CBR minus CBR.
This one's higher.
So what's the difference?
Like in population?
Yeah. So if we did
31.
31.5 minus 4.7,
One of the words with like, and everything's just on the book, like right there. I finished like the far side, 30 minutes.
26.71. That's our difference. So now, remember we talked about if it's a big difference, it's a growing population, that's gonna help you with your claim. If it's a small difference, that means it's stable. And if it's a negative difference, that means that it is declining. That's what we took on our notes. And so whether it's growing, stable, or declining. So tell me which one, if you see that number, is that a big difference? Yeah, so that means the population is what? It's high, but what is happening to the population? Is it going? Yeah, it's growing. So that would be your statement, your claim.
So this country has a high population, which means it's growing.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Question. Growing, that's a big number, right? This one's more, that's more stable, yeah. That's more stable. It's still growing, but not by much, right? Alright guys, regardless of how much practice you got, again, that's not where the points are, that was just practice for what we're gonna do. I wanna cover some of these before we do our exit ticket. So, looking at country A, what was your guys' guess? What was your guys' guess? Let me get some hands, What was your guys' guess? We have a couple hands. Let me start with John. What do you say, John?
I said Yemen.
Yemen. You guys agree? Anybody disagree with Yemen? It was Yemen.
How do you know it? How do you know?
So here's some key things, right? That's why I opened it up so you guys could see it. First thing I would look for personally is I look at life expectancy. Right, knowing what I know about Yemen, and I know we some of us might know a lot about Yemen, some of us might not. But knowing what I know about Yemen, and then also maybe even comparing it, if you guys saw, I put up maps. Yemen is right here in that yellow area. So if you guys look at Yemen in multiple maps, Yemen is the red one here, right? We're gonna cover it, don't worry. This is why that map knowledge that we've been talking about is gonna come into place. Yes. But in general, looking at life expectancy, I kind of have an idea that Yemen is gonna have the lowest compared to the three. We'll talk about this one right now, but 85 is pretty high, right? That's actually the highest we have in the world. And then 75.9, it's not too high, not too low, it's kind of right in the middle. But if I know that, I know Yemen is gonna be this one because of the life expectancy. What was our NIR? Roughly. Raising your hand. You know that I heard it already, so. For country A. 26.31, right? And so, is that a high number, small number, or is that a negative number?
High number.
What's that? Is he wrong?
It says in
26 points. Oh, okay. Regardless, 26 is what we're focused on, but that's high, right? That's a growing population. And then our claim, you can say a couple different things. I'll say one example for that. The claim, if you know that the NIR is high, we can make the claim that it's a growing population, right? Country B, let's just start. It's 85.4 life expectancy. What country is this? Raising your hand. What country is this? Start with Iris. Japan. Yeah, it is Japan. Couple key factors there. One thing that really stood out, if you guys check out the IMR and others. So this one has 1.03. This one has 3.3. This one's at 0.16. So the lowest number of children that are dying by the age of 1, right? And then our claim, again, you could make something with that point. If I see not a lot of children are dying by the age of 1, that could be my claim, right? Last one, we know this was Mexico. We won't cover that. Here is our exit ticket. So you only have to write the bottom. You don't have to write the numbers at the top. Only have to write what's at the bottom. So give me your guess between these 3 countries. Tell me the NIR and then make one claim, and that's all we're doing. After that, we are going to pack up.
This?
Okay.
On this?
It was right. So it's over here. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. NIR and claim.
Oh, it's right here.
Yes. It should be. So only guess NIR claim. Here's what you gotta do before you turn it in though. You have to go share your answer with someone that's not in your group. You guys on? Yeah. I didn't skip this one. So before you guys turn it in, you have to go share your answer with someone not in your group, and then come drop it off. Again, before you turn it in, you have to share with someone not in your group. Yeah, a couple minutes. You guys guess. You're failing this guess. You guys guess. China? China. Who would you guess China? That's a good clue right there, huh? As I'll share it at the end. Ray found a really good clue for what this country is. Alright, again, go share with someone before you turn it in. Go share with someone that's not in your group, and then I'll collect them at the door. You gotta share with someone not in your group. I know the bell's gonna ring in a bit, but just share with someone not in your group. Wait until they're done at least.
Oh, it's G. Oh,
I think it's China. I think it's China. I think it's China. I think it's China.
Once you guys have shared, you can come drop it off. Make sure your name is on it.
The total fertility rate, the average number of children that born I knew that one.
Bro. Oh wait, so where do we put this? I'll collect it and come drop it off. Make sure your name is on it.
Hey.
Got it?
So are you grading it based off of correct and incorrect?
No, effort. I want to see your thinking. Today, the only time I'll do that, go back to your seats once you have turned it in.
Wait a minute.
Or-
So we have to put